Hello, fellow nerds. Today we are going to prep another session for my Wildemount campaign. And since the last video, the game has progressed quite a bit. So I think I'll read out part of the campaign book and then recap what happened at the table. The next big chapter after Seafarers is Hunger of the Deep. Once the players are ready to begin this last section of the adventure, read or paraphrase the following to set the scene. Wake up, travelers. The voice of Berth, one of the Wave Chaser's crew members, rouses you from slumber. The sun is barely above the horizon, but you can just make out the docks of a port through the portal window of your cabin. It's past dawn and time to get moving. Now, due to unforeseen events that happen in every D&D game, our ship is not the Wave Chaser, because I messed up and there were two ships in Palma Flora and I quickly had to sink one of them, and my players decided that they are back on their own ship. One of my players has the noble background, I believe, and her father owns merchant ships, apparently. And she and her twin brother borrowed one of them, and they ended up returning to that ship, but I had to put the pirate crew on the ship. So I had them do as pirates do, seeing that their own ship, the Wave Chaser, was unable to return to sea because it was sinking or damaged enough so that it was clear that they couldn't use that ship anymore. They just commandeered the player's ship. And my players are a lot into role-playing, so my complete planning, when I plan a session, I have certain milestones, not as in leveling milestones, but in this should be done in the first 2 hours. By the end of the session, they should be here, more or less. Yeah, they are very much into role-playing, and if I remember correctly, they didn't even hit the first milestone I had planned for the session. One session was completely being on the ship, talking to the crew for almost 4 hours straight, which is nice, but I always stress very much about planning, so I always over-plan, I think, in terms of I plan too far ahead. Not that I steer them or anything. If they want to figure out who the cook is and how they can help him de-stress because he has to do the job of 2 and stuff like that, by all means. It's their story just as much as mine. So they got quite cozy with Captain Three Earrings. So much so that she... how do I put this? Took a liking to the rogue and woke him up at night to offer him a place in her crew or in her boss's crew, She told him she's a pirate, which he had guessed already. And being a shady rogue as they are, he gave a non-answer. I think he told her he'd think about it, but he has to take into consideration what his little sister wants. Are they twins, or are they just siblings? They are from a big family. I think there's 5 of them, and they are looking for one of their siblings. It's a very convoluted backstory. You know, there's always the one player that has no backstory at all for their character, which is fine, and then there's the polar opposite, the guy who hands in 15 pages of backstory and then changes everything and hands in 50 new pages of backstory, which I also appreciate, but I can't remember all of this. So they are looking for one of their siblings. I think they're twins. One of them's a girl and the rogue is male, although the girl goes by gender fluid terms which don't exist in my native language, so it's rather difficult. But yeah, she's mistaken for a boy often. Maybe he is a boy. Have I been mistaken my player character's gender all this time? Oh god, this is terrifying. Anyway, everybody got along with the crew quite well. Our druid caught up on their druid doing shady business after dark, sending out messages to someone they don't know yet. And they decided, and this is where we go back to the campaign book. Here's a section that says adapting your port of call, because they have to gather supplies for their underwater adventure. So they have to go to some port in the area. There was Bisaft Isle, Brokenbank, and Port Damali. I steered them away from Port Damali just because it's a big city and I did not have the time to prep Damali. So they opted for Brokenbank. And Brokenbank is described as follows. The atmosphere. Brokenbank is a muddy, rain-slick village crammed full of travelers. It can feel claustrophobic, and it seems as though a leering Zelezo guard stands on every street corner. Apothecary. Brokenbank's apothecary is a chubby female sea elf druid named Aldagem. 3 earrings saved her life when she was young, and although she doesn't fully trust the Tabaxi, who she knows is a pirate, she is happy to help her friend. She has 10 potions of water breathing in stock and sells them to their characters at half price for 40 gold pieces each. There is also a pawn shop and a general store. Brokenbank features a thriving pawn shop that doubles as its general store. Items sold here fetch 75% of their value rather than 50%. Now I kept the atmosphere and the apothecary. I think I'm not sure whether I insinuated it or whether the players just went for that interpretation. I think they believe Aldegam and 3 earrings were lovers or are still lovers. So I had to move away from the mentor-mentee relationship and close the age gap a little. If my players want to save this relationship, because the druid was a little, well, Three Earrings hasn't been here for a while, she never visits, I miss her, but I'm too proud to just stroll up to her ship and talk to her. So now the characters offered to take a message back to the captain, maybe, and have been insinuating that, oh, the alchemist, she's so lovely, but she seems so sad, why don't you go visit? It's really cute, and I'm absolutely here for it. I also had to change all the prices because my players have no money and they need the potions of water breathing. So rather than have them pay for it, Aldegem made a deal with them. They have to fill out a survey because she changed the concoction and wants to know whether it works properly, if there are any side effects. I kind of role played her as one of my real life colleagues, to be honest. Slightly confused, very endearing, very smart, academic. For example, she forgets to unlock the door to her shop, goes back in the back room to brew potions and asks herself why there are no customers, because the door is still locked and everybody thinks the shop's closed for today. That kind of personality I gave her. And oh yeah, there was an incident, let's call it that. My players decided they want to experience this new setting via food, something I was wholly unprepared for. So I had to improvise food stalls alongside the main street. I decided there's no marketplace, but rather a long main street with food stalls and little stalls that sell jewelry and touristy stuff. And they went about tasting the local dishes. Yes, yeah. You can't prepare for that kind of stuff, so I think I had them eat fried tentacles and lots of fruit, fish dishes. Yeah, that's about it. And while they were walking from food stall to food stall, eating their way, or rather, you know, these little free samples you get, and then you sample something, oh, that's nice, and then you move on to the next stall and sample there until you're full. That's kind of what they did. And I thought, let's spice things up a bit, and also because I knew my players want to continue after this specific quest, I placed some plot hooks for later on, and I had I think the rogue and the druid, they have ungodly high passive perception, and they noticed little children or young children running about, moving through the crowd almost unseen but always in pairs, and I had them notice a shady figure in one of the house entries. And the children are non-threatening, but the rogue pretty soon figured out that they are either running errands, delivering messages, or that they are pickpocketing. I did not have them pickpocket one of my players because I rolled badly on my decision-making die. And yeah, I think they talked to the alchemist, ordered the potions, which I forgot she had already brewed, and told them she had to make them and they have to come back the next day. And on their way back to the local Airbnb, they followed a pair of the children, or walked up to a pair, I don't remember, it's been weeks. I should have got my notes out for this, but the bard talked to one of the children and tried to get them to tell him where he could buy sweets. It was a bit creepy. He didn't realize it when he did it, but it was a bit creepy. A shady foreigner trying to get the kids to tell him where they can buy sweets. Anyway, the group figured out something fishy is going on with the children, and the rogue suggested that they are probably a pickpocket ring, and he wanted to keep an eye on it. So then they went to the Airbnb, spent the night. Nothing particularly bad or good happened. Nothing happened. Everybody slept. They got the long rest that they didn't need because no one cast any spells. Oh yes, the Airbnb is above a fruit shop for some reason. And on their way down, the bard flirted, as they do, with a girl that works in the shop, and they basically got free breakfast. It was another endearing role-playing interaction, which I again had to completely improvise because none of this is in the campaign book. And then they went back to the druid to get their potions, and as they were leaving, the rogue hung back and talked to Aldegam and asked her about 3 earrings, and insinuated that he knows what she's doing for a living, that she's a pirate, and also said that she offered them jobs, and the druid was a bit taken aback. She knew 3 earrings as a pirate. She was a bit concerned that 3 earrings is trying to rope the group into illegal business, and she wanted them to, just stay out of it. 3 earrings is a great gal, but keep your distance. It's not worth it. And then they went back to the ship. Oh no, I forgot something crucial. The evening before, they went to the local tavern, as you do in every D&D game, to talk to people. The bard cast Disguise Self to impersonate the rich dude whose name I have forgotten. The guy who runs the port in Brokenbank. and gave everybody drinks on his tab. Not sure how that's going to impact future developments. And the rogue just watched people and pretty soon discovered that two shady figures were watching him and his friends. And I imagine that, like, you know, when we first meet Aragorn or Strider in the Lord of the Rings movie, sitting in his dimly lit corner, hood drawn into his face, smoking his pipe, that kind of scenario. His sibling tried to make conversation with a bunch of dwarves. For some reason there are a lot of dwarves on this island, even though dwarves are not known for being sailors. I like dwarves, I put them everywhere, so deal with it. Yeah, the sibling is a bit socially awkward, but tried to make conversation with an elderly dwarven woman who has a beard. It's important, female dwarves have beards. And they were chatting for a bit, and the conversation turned to their ship's name, which is, if I'm going to say that, they're going to find my YouTube channel, the Serpent Sister. And they didn't seem to like that, because serpents are a bad omen in the area. And I placed the knowledge of, you know, the priestess they are going to fight is a warlock, and her patron is the one and only Ukatoa, who takes the form of a serpent and has a giant eye. And since most of my players are huge anime fans, I told them, or I had one of the dwarves tell them a story about a man who can take the form of a serpent and produce a blade from his throat, you know, Orochimaru style, which they didn't pick up on at first. I was devastated, I'm telling you, because this rumor I had planned, it clicked the session after, though. Oh, it was an Orochimaru reference. Yes, it was. Thanks for noticing. Yes, so they know about this. Something bad is going to happen. The stuff that's happening, it's not like it's a prophecy, but it all makes sense. The rumors and stories the old sailors tell about the serpent in the sea, and the serpent has a sword and there's a big eye, and your ship has a name that's sort of tied to a serpent, and I connected all that, and I think it turned out pretty well. So that was the evening before they went to the druid and had the conversation about not becoming a pirate. Then they set sail, and the campaign book gives you the opportunity to have an encounter on the open sea, which I skipped because we were pressed for time in the session, and because my group is very roleplay heavy. I'm not sure whether they that much into combat, even though I play with 3 of them in the Strahd campaign, in the Curse of Strahd campaign. I'm not sure yet. So I skipped the encounter on the open sea, which is basically the local the Clovis Concord, sort of the local police force thingy, catch up on them and try to arrest 3 earrings. That would have been it, but I skipped that part and had them go directly to the sunken ruin of Palma Flora. And my players are level 2 at the moment. I leveled them as suggested in the campaign book. And I kid you not, the final combat is so overpowered they nearly died. I had them, and I didn't fudge any rolls, but I had the, they descend into the abyss and come to this open space, a ritual circle. The priestess, Selachai, is in the center of the circle, trying to weave a spell and turn one of the corpses from the village into a shark body abomination. She is surrounded by, I think, 5 guards that do nothing unless Selachai herself is attacked. And around this circle of guards there are 2 shark body abominations, which are, the top half is shark and the lower bottom is humanoid. They don't count as humanoids though. They are circling the scene, and I think they have each 50 HP. And the guards are bandits, if I remember correctly, and Selachai is a warlock. And my players were quite clever and tried the stealthy way, which worked fine. The bard distracted one of the... he used disguise self again, which is not a spell of his, but it's either a class or a race feat, I'm not sure. So he disguised himself as one of the guards and gestured that there's something over there and lured one of the guards away. And the others tried to sneak closer, except for the druid. She is specialized in ranged combat anyway. And they pretty much figured out that they need to just take the Rod of Retribution, which they don't know is a Rod of Retribution, just the staff the priestess has, that they just need to take this and return to 3 earrings, who has also channeled me as the dungeon master, telling the crew, the adventurers, that, not every fight needs to be fought until the bitter end. Sometimes it's better to just steal what you want and then get out of there. Because I had a feeling that this fight is very unbalanced. And yeah, they did that. But they also engaged the guards in combat. And then everybody was fighting individual fights, which is always bad if you don't have a tank in the party. And the rogue. And that was a feat of genius. He was like, well, I'm gonna sneak up on the priestess and she was fighting someone else. The rogue snuck up on her while she was in hand-to-hand combat with someone else and tried to sleight of hand the rod out of her other hand, the one that's not wielding the sword. Oh, okay, I had him roll a contested athletics or acrobatics check. I had him decide which one he wanted because he described it in a way that, you know, I was on the fence. Is it acrobatics? Is it athletics? And I it's a contested roll. And the priestess rolled so poorly. So he won the contest and disarmed her in combat. Well, not disarmed because she wasn't using the staff to fight, but you know, and rolled out of it. And it was such a good maneuver. I was so proud of them, and I was so happy they succeeded because it was a really good plan. And they had such bad luck before because the bard first cast sleep on targets that were at full HP, so it just didn't work. Then he cast something, and I don't remember, was it hideous laughter or something? On the shark body abominations, thinking they were humanoid, but they aren't. So that spell failed. And then the third time, and that's when I intervened, he tried to cast something that needed the target to have a certain intelligence, like 4 or above. Again on the shark body abominations, because they were tearing the party apart. And they have an intelligence of 1. And I told him, if that spell has a minimum amount of intelligence necessary, don't do it, because these things are fucking stupid. I usually am not this blunt about helping the players, but I took pity on him because everything he had tried before that, apart from the disguise self part, had failed. Yeah. Spellcasters, man. Yeah, so the rogue has the staff, which they wanted to get anyway. And okay, I admit I fudged one roll, because when one of the shark body abominations bit the rogue, I rolled crit damage, and that would have zeroed the level 2 rogue. So I fudged it, and in a way that he had 2 HP left. I don't want my party to die at level 2. This was supposed to be a leveling adventure. Jesus. So, and then we left off in the middle of combat because time was running out and people have to go to work and stuff. And the next session will pick up with them making their escape in a very, very creative manner, because was it the druid or the bard? One of them figured out that they can use shape water to create a rocket made of ice. Oh, I think that's the younger elf sibling. they have a spell. They can create an ice cube that they want to. They create the ice cube, someone else moves it up, so they all hold on to this piece of ice. That's why they called it an ice rocket, and have it shoot up to the surface. Yeah. And we'll see. Is the ice rocket faster than the sharks that will definitely follow them? And I honestly have no idea how to figure that out. Like how fast does a cube of ice rise to the surface? I'm not prepared for this kind of physics. Well, maybe I'll just use oh, I don't know. I have to look it up. And the next session is, I think, in 2 weeks. Yeah, we don't have a lot of time to play at the moment, which is really sad. Yeah, and the campaign book offers 2 endings to the Selachai encounter. One is defeat, and one is victory, and neither applies to our scenario, so I think I just have to rewrite this. If the characters were defeated by Selachai and their Sahuagin, all is not lost. The warlock is no stranger to killing, but she recognizes an opportunity when it appears before her. She commands her minions to bind the characters, stabilize them, and carry their unconscious forms to the surface. Any characters who survived the fight awaken. Any characters who survived the fight. I see. Maybe this was meant to be OP or after all. They awaken a few hours later on the shore alongside the ruins of the mainland part of Palmaflora, their wrists and ankles bound by kelp. 4 Sahuagin watch over them while a 5th alerts Selachai where she lurks in the water nearby. When the characters face Selachai, read: the Sahuagin priestess emerges from the water to face you, her mouth spreading into a huge grin that reveals her needle-like teeth. In fractured common, she says, "I could use the help of landwalkers like you. The surface dwellers and boat riders hunt us with their hooks and harpoons, but they trust you. Take my hand. We don't need to fight. I can tell you so many tales of the landwalkers' evil." The ending sets up future adventurers along the Menagerie coast. As a DM, you can have fun with the elusive morality of Selachai and the Sahuagin, and of the Clovis Conquered. Who are the real villains? Are either of these factions truly good or evil? What of 3 Earrings and the Revelry Pirates? All these dangling plot threads offer hints of new stories that you can guide your players toward, or which they can seek out of their own volition. And in case you won the fight, if the characters prevailed in the battle against Selachai, the rod of retribution falls from her lifeless hand and settles in the sand as any remaining foes flee into the murky depths. When the characters return to the surface with the rod, 3 Earrings and her crew throw down rope ladders and bring them aboard. The captain of Wave Chaser is conflicted. She asks for the rod straight away, no matter what. However, depending on the character's actions, she might have formed a bond with them over their brief time together, which in our scenario has definitely happened. And then, depending on whether this bond was created, there's a part 3 earrings resolve or 3 earrings treachery. If any of the characters convinced 3 earrings not to think of them as pawns earlier in the adventure, she resolves to treat all the characters as friends. She welcomes them back onto the wave chaser with a huge smile, then asks the adventurers to come with her to the pirate haven of Dark Toe. There is no use in being subtle about it, she says with a shrug. I need to fence the thing in order to get you your gold. No place to do that but in Dark Toe. If the characters refuse the offer, the Tabaxi sadly accepts their decision, but she draws her cutlass and half-jokingly threatens to gut them if they ever betray her in the future. If the characters go with 3 earrings, she is true to her word. She even invites the party to join her as pirates on Wave Chaser, and hints that they could earn the command of their own ship if they stick with her. From this point, your campaign can continue with the characters as pirates along the Menagerie coast, or they could mutiny and try to take Wave Chaser for themselves. And if you haven't formed a bond with 3 earrings, she betrays you and has you killed or thrown into prison. No, she doesn't have you killed. She puts you in prison and brings you back to Dark Toe, and then you have to escape from there, which is definitely not going to happen because she has already offered the rogue to become a pirate. And after that, they are level 3, which maybe they should have been already. I don't know. Anyway, I have no idea where this is going. I think I will try to make them go back to Brokenbank to fill out the scientific questionnaire Aldegam has prepared for them, and to figure out what's going on with the children, and maybe tie it back to the siblings' backstory, because it's a port city after all, and maybe the merchants there have heard something about their missing sister, I think. Well, this was more recap than reading time, but I hope you liked it nonetheless. I really enjoyed talking about my players and what they come up with. Anyway, I hope you found this relaxing and entertaining, and if you're using this to fall asleep, I wish you wonderful dreams. And if you're just starting your day, I hope you'll have a wonderful day. And see you next time. Bye bye, fellow nerds.